All right, Congresswoman Crockett, I want to bring in these two gentlemen who have been sitting here since the top of the show, Ankush Khardori and Ian Millhiser. Gentlemen, we were talking during the break, and I didn't come to you during my conversation with Charlie Sykes because I figured, well, you guys are on here to talk about the court rulings, but you have thoughts on both the president's debate performance and all this talk about either dumping President Biden from the ticket or the president dropping out of the race. Ankush, you go first.
Yeah, the debate was not good. It was not a good performance. However, I have to say, like all these scenarios about him being replaced or whatever, particularly the involuntary ones, they sound like West Wing fan fiction to me. I think that the party, both by commission and omission, and I mean not just the official party operatives, but the media sort of aligned with the party, they made their decision by commission and omission months, if not years ago. I think that as a practical matter, I don't see a scenario in which they can now switch him out that wouldn't be riskier than the status quo. And the one thing I would also say to people who are saying that it was such a shock to see Joe Biden perform the way he did on Thursday night is I don't think those people have been paying close enough attention to the president's schedule and to his public appearances. When Rob Hur issued his report, among other things, identifying a possible, cognitive deficiencies on the part of the president in connection with his special counsel's investigation of the classified documents. Joe Biden went out and gave an impromptu press availability that night. You could have seen everything you saw last Thursday night at that press availability months ago.
Well, I mean, I disagree with that only because he mistakenly said the president of Mexico versus another president. But in that press conference, there was some news made that was ignored because everyone's focused on the fact that he slipped up on the name of a president. But Ian, let me get you in here before I go back to the Congresswoman.
I guess I'll give some advice to the Biden campaign, which is that I want to see Kamala Harris all the time. I want her on every TV show. I want her on the morning shows. I want her on the afternoon shows. I want her on the night shows. She famously loves to cook. I want her on cooking shows. If there is a sports team that she is interested in, I want her on sports shows. We need to make the American people very comfortable with Kamala Harris for two reasons. One is that I think after last night, a lot of people, including myself, are reasonably asking, does Joe Biden, a man who has served his country honorably for 50 years, have 4 more years in him? And if he does not, what I think the Biden campaign needs to do is reassure folks that the person who will be his caretaker if he does not have 4 years is someone they are comfortable with. The second reason is the idea of a brokered convention is a fantasy. There's, the delegates weren't elected by anyone. They don't have any legitimacy to choose a president. We have already chosen who takes over for Joe Biden if he's unable to do the job, and that's Kamala Harris. And if they do have to swap him out, she's it.
You're 100%.
Yeah, Ian and I were talking about this before we came on here, and I said, we already have a mechanism in place for the scenario that people are very concerned about, which is that the president cannot serve in this capacity. It's called having a vice president.
Right.
It's called having a vice president. And so what people are talking about in terms of instituting a new ticket is really just talking about inserting someone else in the line of succession.
Right.
That's it.
And Ian, I agree with you that Vice President Harris should be out there in our faces every day, every possible moment. The only quibble I have with what you're saying is the Vice President is out there every day. I get her schedule. Everyone in the media gets her schedule. Right. We know where she is. She's been out west all this week.
Right.
What needs to happen is that my colleagues in the press need to cover her. They need to bring cameras to wherever she is, and they need to report on what she's doing exactly for the reasons that you're talking about. Congresswoman Crockett, what do you make of Ian's suggestion, which I think is an excellent one, to make sure that the Vice President of the United States is out front and center so that people and that folks in my profession cover her in the way that they should as a vice president so that they get, quote unquote, comfortable with her?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I absolutely agree. Number one, the vice president has been keeping up a very intense schedule, and she's doing amazing work. It is quite frustrating for me, though, because as a Black woman who was elected in this country, I always feel like we still kind of come back to this very same thing, that she has to do more than anybody else has ever had to do. was this a question for any other vice president that came before her? She is the vice president of the United States. We have had scenarios where we have lost presidents because they've been executed or otherwise passed away. And the deal is there wasn't all of this, let's insert somebody else. She is the second one. And so it is very frustrating because, again, I feel as if there's always just this different bar that's set for her. It's like when I ask people all the time, can you name for me 5 other vice presidents? Because they really have always wanted her out front. And that's not ever been the role of a vice president. The role of a vice president is to be a supporting cast member. And at the end of the day, when we talk about comfortability, what we should be talking about is, are we comfortable with the policies that are being pushed? The Republicans right now are pushing Project 2025. So at the end of the day, do you want Project 2025 or do you want Roe restored? Do you want Project 2025 or do you want affirmative action, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do you want Project 2025 or do you want loyalists that are going to, or that will include having loyalists instead of those committed public servants who have always served in these capacities? Like, there is a real danger, and to act as if this comes down to personalities, I need all of America to grow up and decide that they are going to choose what makes sense with going forward in this country, or they can decide that we can have more of our freedoms taken away.
And in the less than a minute we have left, I would love, Ankush and Ian, for you to talk about the significance of the overturning of Chevron deference.
Oh, man.
And what that means for the country. And I'm coming to you last, Ian, because when you were here, you said that was the most important case. But go on.
It is an incredibly important case. And it continues a trend in which the Republican appointees on the Supreme Court are arrogating more and more power to themselves and to judges throughout this country to second-guess public servants, civil servants, the experts in our government. It is going to be bad across every dimension of social policy making that is managed by any federal agency. It's going to be bad.
Ian?
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of decisions that Congress has said should be made by experts. And, you know, these are on all kinds of issues. Everything from, you know, who gets overtime pay to, like, what your cable rates are in some places, on so many different things. The justices don't know anything about cable rates. And more than that, there are tens of thousands of public servants who make these decisions. It takes a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of talking people to do it. The justices are 9 people. They have 36 law clerks. They don't have the personnel to perform the task that they have now assigned to themselves.
And more to your point, my colleague Chris Hayes, the anchor of All In, pointed out in the decision just this example that the justice confused laughing gas with another with another gas that's actually regulated by the
Ohio
EPA.
Case,
I mean, come on. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, thank you very much for coming to the Saturday show. Also, Ankush Kadori, Ian Millhiser, and my buddy Charlie Sykes, even though we disagree. Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming to the Saturday show.
Thank you.